Joining me again is Christopher Petrella. He's a columnist at Nation of Change, also a PhD student at UC Berkeley in African American Studies. Great to talk to you as always. I want to walk through this fascinating circle now, which we've identified, which connects private prisons making money from the detention of illegal immigrants, which we've covered individually on this show, as well as the bank investments in some of these private prison industries, which basically leads us to some of the big Wall Street banks that were bailed out by the government, making money essentially from the detention of illegal immigrants. You start where you think makes the most sense.
That's right, David. Well, thanks for having me on today. I think it might make sense to begin by clarifying some of our terms. And the term prison industrial complex has become so popular in recent years that in a lot of ways, to paraphrase former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich, the term itself has gone from a period of obscurity to relative meaninglessness without any intervening period of coherence. It's applied so carelessly today that I think it makes sense to begin by defining very precisely what we mean by prison industrial complex. So here's essentially my argument. In recent years, a lot of attention has been paid to the industrial operations of the prison industrial complex. That is, the contracted exploitation of prison labor. Surprisingly little attention has actually been paid to prison financing. That is, the benefactors, the financiers, investors, shareholders who actually hold significant investments in private prison companies. So it's actually a bit ironic when we start to talk about prison labor, because at present only about 0.5% of all prisoners are contracted by profit-generating companies. And so the argument might go something like this: a private firm, a private company like Boeing or Texas Instruments or even Victoria's Secret will hire a prisoner for 80 cents an hour to assemble products, to perform services, etc. And then, of course, as the argument goes, the company will actually increase its profit margins by paying less. And although that's kind of a seductive story, and I think it has a lot of emotional traction in the public sphere, it's actually only half true. And essentially, here's why. In the late 70s, in 1979, there was a piece of legislation passed called, the colloquial name is PI, the Prison Industry Enhancement Certification Act. And what the act basically said was that any employer wishing to hire, quote, convict labor actually needs to adhere to prevailing minimum wage standards. So today, the federal minimum wage is at $7.25, and so any company wishing to hire prisoners needs to pay $7.25. The catch is that written into this law is also a provision that allows state departments of corrections to deduct up to 80% of gross wages that prisoners earn while working for a profit-generating company. And
right, that was going to be my next question, which is the company may be paying the actual minimum wage, but what actually goes to the prisoner could be a tiny fraction of that, as we often hear these $1 an hour, 50 cent an hour wages. So is it safe to say that it's the state then that is keeping that difference?
Well, it's not necessarily the state that's keeping the difference. The state is definitely making the decision ultimately as to what proportion of wages will be garnished. And as the law states, it can be up to 80% of wages garnished. And typically, a proportion of that could go to family support. Some of it could go to victims' compensation, services, or funds. And some of it could actually end up in state departments of corrections, but typically not all of it, to answer the question specifically. So the point being that, in a lot of ways, these companies aren't saving tremendous amounts of money by going this route. So although that is one, I would say, pole of the prison industrial complex, it is just one. And it's also important to consider the role that shareholders play in essentially formatting the operations of private prison companies.
Okay, so in the limited time we have, I definitely want to touch on this circle that involves the detention of those suspected to be in the country illegally, leading all the way back to the big bank. So talk to us a little bit about that. Which banks own stakes in which private prison companies, first of all, I think is the question.
Sure, yeah, of course. So first of all, I should just preface it briefly by saying that last year alone, around 200,000 immigrants were detained in private prison facilities. That would be privately managed, owned, operated facilities. And this is a number that's up by over 1,000% in the last decade. So every time a piece of anti-immigration legislation is passed by state legislatures, and of course, private prison companies are lobbying for this, specifically by talking with representatives of the Department of Homeland Security, these companies, and I'll mention them right now, are earning a pretty hefty return on their investment. So as it currently stands, David, the two largest private prison companies, Corrections Corporation of America and the GEO Group, both publicly traded, have a number of shares owned by the following 5 largest U.S. Investment banks. So, for example, Citigroup today owns about $325,000 worth of stocks, securities in these two companies. Bank of America, $1.1 million. Goldman Sachs, $3.1 million. J.P. Morgan Chase, $7.6 million. And the mother of them all, Wells Fargo, owns a whopping $118 million in these two companies, which accounts for almost 10% of GEO Group's entire market capitalization.
So, right. So when I look through these numbers, and by the way, people can access these numbers on the SEC website. The Citigroup, 325,000. I mean, literally a drop in the bucket for what Citigroup is doing and the size of Citigroup. And I would say it would not be realistic to say Citigroup has a vested interest in the detention of illegal immigrants. That being said, when you look at J.P. Morgan Chase and increasingly so with Wells Fargo, there's a compelling argument to be made. We can't say that Wells Fargo is actively interested in passing these laws which will increase detention of illegal immigrants or suspected illegal immigrants, but we can clearly find why that motivation would exist.
That's right. No, I think that's true. And although, I think the picture looks bleak right now because there is such a large degree of collusion between private prison operators and investment banks. I will say, to pause, there is actually a movement afoot right now in which concerned citizens have begun to demand that all companies, and this includes the investment banks, that hold shares in private prison companies, CCA and GEO Group, divest immediately. And so if your listeners are interested in getting involved, they can head on over to the National Prison Divestment Campaign's website at prisondivestment.wordpress.com. And in a lot of ways, I think that the direct divestment in companies that invest in for-profit corrections firms is really the next step in sort of stanching the flow of the prison industrial complex.
Well, Christopher, this is great stuff because we've talked so much on the show over several years about private prisons and about individual instances of a public prison going private, vice versa. But this really ties it back into how this relates to what's going on Wall Street and with investment. So this is absolutely excellent stuff. We've been speaking with Christopher Petrella. He's a columnist at Nation of Change, so you can read his stuff there. Also a PhD student at UC Berkeley in African American Studies. Great as always to talk to you.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be back with more after this.